Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Detour Live. Thanks for joining us. And also thanks for subscribing to the channel. YouTube.com/the Detour Podcast. It's all making a difference and we really do appreciate it. I'm your host, Dan Jones, and joined as always by four-time National Road Champion, Johnny Turreau. Now, Iffy, I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I got on Wikipedia because a very special guest tonight is also a National Road title winner in 1989, Gary Clively. And when I searched it, it had on Wikipedia, you're only listed as a three-time national winner. Where'd you pinch the fourth? Because I want to make sure that we haven't been lying for all these episodes.
You can't trust Wikipedia because they spelled Gary's name wrong as well. But so I won my first one as an amateur in 1970, which hit me to the games, and then I won 3 pro titles in a row. So they forgot about the first one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you might want to get that fixed because it's making me look like a liar every night. All right.
No. All good. All good.
Big stage overnight. There's a lot to unpack before we bring on our guests. But fantastic win to Bardet. It's his first World Tour win in 4 years, I see. And we did predict it thanks to, I think it was Annette who said Bardet was a good chance of winning the stage.
Yeah.
And
I thought she was spot on too. I should have backed it myself. But anyway, fantastic ride. But look, I thought because our special guest is the first Australian to finish top 10 of a Grand Tour, and of course, first Australian to finish top 10 in the Vuelta, which he did in 1976. I think 76.
77.
Sorry, 77. Okay. Oh well, never let the facts get away with a good story.
On,
and I haven't had to research much of this because I know the Garry Clively story so well.
Well, clearly you haven't.
Well. Yeah, years, 75, 76, 77. That's right. Now, 76, he rode the
70s.
Giro, and 77, he rode the Vuelta. That's correct. Yep. And as a 20-year-old in the Giro and 21-year-old in the Vuelta. But I thought, who better to talk about the stage with other than Gary? So I thought we could talk to Gary.
Do we want to show the video first of Gary? You're all over the shop tonight, mate. I thought we had a plan.
That was the plan. Show the video, not talk about the stage. So,
all right. I thought we were going to talk about the stage first, and now you're changing it. That's all right. We'll carry on. See,
you know what?
This happened at the tour. Stage 14
said?
was when we start going the biffo because we're all a little bit cooked. But let's turn it around. Let's get positive.
Well, but before you hit the button on the video, because it was about 3 or 4 years ago, Scotty McGrory was hosting this show with Gatesy that they were doing. I think it was for SBS, and I used to have a little full cycle. That's right. Yeah. And I used to have a little segment in it as an old fart. We'd interview different people, and this little part came from that show.
I can understand any rider who's got that cycling bug, love of cycling, being competitive, wanting to give your best, and things happen out there in cycle races where you're left alone with your effort. It can teach you a hell of a lot about yourself. I think it's a great sport for that too.
Yeah, Gary Clively, I'll tell you, that's an amazing story. So he went to Europe, I think he turned 19 when he got over there, and went and raced a little bit in Italy, got noticed, rode the World Championships from Belgium, I think, that year, and finished 4th in the World Amateur Road title. It's just a young kid. So then the Italians started to take notice of him. He got a pro contract. So at 20 years of age, he gets a pro contract. That didn't happen back in those days. Rode his first Grand Tour, the Vuelta. Amazing. Finished top 10.
It probably wasn't that year at the level of Tour de France, but it was a hard 3-week race. It was hot and it was stages very long, 240, 250 Ks. We finished the last week in the Pyrenees. I got punched in the head by one of the good Italian riders because I came underneath him on a corner on one of the last climbs, he looked like he was losing the wheel, and I just sort of ducked underneath him, and he really didn't like it. And he came up behind me once it leveled out and punched me in the head. And I learned that, you know, these guys are pretty tough, and they're not going to take anything from a young upstart.
And there was legendary shots of him climbing the top of mountains with Eddie Merckx and Francesco Moser. I mean, just stunning stuff. And then, within a year from that, he just got disillusioned and gave it away.
After I quit cycling, there was a long period of time where I was asking myself a lot of questions, and you know, I learned things like meditation and sort of about spiritual life, which helped me a lot. It helped me to get over cycling, which, you know, I know that I really loved passionately. At the same time, it sort of helped me get my feet on the ground and be more of maybe a normal person.
I think Dave Sanders got him a job working in his bike shop, a bit of part-time down at Chelsea, so he used to catch the train down. Dave said, well, here's an old bike, why don't you ride in? So he started riding into work, fell in love with cycling again. That year, started racing. Legendary stories of his comeback after 10 years, more than 10 years off the bike, and that by the end of that year, he won the Australian road title.
Something came over me, you know, and maybe it was because I knew my mother was at the finish, not sure why, but yeah, I just felt really good, and I hit out early, and yeah, I beat them.
They must have been shocked.
They were, and there was a few expletives after the line too about it. So yeah, but I think it was a fair race.
No regrets?
No, you really learn a lot about yourself and surviving.
Fantastic piece there, Iffy. Really touches on the heartstrings with the music as well. You know, music plays a big part with those little clips. But it's an amazing story, amazing story.
Yeah,
And
a beautiful story, and congratulations to SP, who put most of that together for Gatesy. So there you go. So I know that we've got Gary sitting in the wings, so we should bring him in. But the one thing that didn't get... G'day, Gary. How are you, mate?
oh no, the audio. You there? Can you hear us?
You got to push the... Push
Your
the,
mic's muted. Welcome to the detour, mate. This is usually how it goes down with the technical side of things. I think your mic's still on mute, mate.
So at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little...
Yeah, okay.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Welcome to the detour.
Sorry.
That's how we do an introduction.
No. Normally, we have glitches. Normally, it's either Dan or myself. Normally, me who does that. So, welcome aboard, Gary.
Thank you.
I haven't caught up with you for a few months with lockdown and everything. I remember catching up. We had a little party at Gordon Johns' place a few months back, which was fantastic. We were caught up.
Yeah, it was a great day, yeah.
I just wanted to touch the one thing we didn't touch on in that just quick story and what started it all. I remember I'd been racing in Europe in 73, came home and we had the Victorian Championships, which was a test race to pick the Victorian team to go on to race in the Australian Championships, which was selection for the Commonwealth Games in Christchurch in 74. And I remember most of us who'd been racing in Europe, you were all pretty cooked, came back and I think I managed to finish that Vicky title just, but I couldn't get out of my own way. But I remember noticing you looked so good on a bike. You looked like a European pro, just the way you ride. That's a great shot of you in that Australian titles with Ted Sanders in the background. Dave Sanders' dad, who was a bit of a mentor of yours and a wonderful man, and one of the great coaches down at Hawthorn, a great club.
He's got high socks. I like it.
Looks like he just got off the golf course, doesn't he? Yeah. But
it was a hot day too.
It was a hot day.
And shorts and t-shirts.
Yeah. But we won't go too long about it. But you did a great ride in one of either the test race of the title where you were away and you punctured, but you would have won. And so they picked you for that Commonwealth Games. This is a tragic story in that they picked. So Garry Clively is named in the Australian cycling team who's going to those games, and I think they actually left Clyde Sefton out because he didn't perform that well at those titles, but he was the silver medalist from the Olympics only 2 years earlier. So, but then when the team was announced, the whole Commonwealth Games team, they decided to put Clyde Sefton in and drop you, Gary, but they didn't even bother to tell you. They just did that. I still find it one of the most ridiculous things Australian cycling's ever done. So,
well, they did. They contacted Ted Sanders, actually, Dave's dad, and he came down to visit us, and he broke the news that I wouldn't be going to Christchurch. As I understood it, he was asked if he could do it because they didn't want to deal with me directly. They didn't want to tell me directly. They would rather have someone else break the news, and so I guess that let them off the hook. And it was pretty disappointing. It was one thing to be disappointed about, not going to the games, but to realise that there was, a situation with the governing body at the time that it wasn't just my case, but a lot of people had problems, with unfair situations, and the reputation of the governing body at that time wasn't very good, put that way.
No, you're very, very, very right. And so you're only 18. So you decide, bugger it, I'm going to Europe. So you and David Allen, Dumps, Donny's younger brother, decided to...
is this Dumps photo here?
That's Dumps there, yeah.
Yeah, that's Dumps and I in a race in Dandenong. And he actually sprinted. It was like a circuit race, and two of us were together at the finish, and David sprinted towards the final corner to get in front of me because it was just 150 metres or so around the corner to the end, and he went wide and I went under him. He had to, stop himself from crashing, actually, and so I just sprinted through the inside and beat him. Normally he would be that far in front of me, but that day he just overcooked it.
Yeah, so I love the story.
David was at my house that morning when Ted Sanders came over to tell me, and it was as soon as Ted told me, I just turned to David and said, "What do you reckon? Shall we go to Europe?" And he said, "Let's do it." So we did it right away. We decided on the spot together that we would go together, and that's what we did.
Well, they say everything happens for a reason. Do you look back and say, well, that was meant to happen because it put a rocket up your ass?
Yeah, well, once I decided to go, that was my focus from that time on. And I had an apprenticeship, which I quit, and I got a job down in Mentone with David, and we worked in a steel yard for a couple of months and saved up enough for our airfares, and that was it. Off we went. So yeah, it all happened very quickly.
I was just
one-way ticket. Sorry, one-way ticket.
Yeah, you got there. You had no money. It's a great story. So they get there, and they were supposed to meet a guy named Harry Luther, who I got to know. Harry, a bit of a character, but he wasn't there. He was actually in Spain, and he had a crash on his bike.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and he ended up in hospital. So he was supposed to connect you with this team. So this team don't even know anything about you. So you contact them, you go along, and they're not even interested. An 18-year-old kid, a 17-year-old who's too young to race with them anyway. And you said, can we just go for a ride to training with your team?
Yeah, that's right, because we had no money left and we had nothing to lose. So we just thought, well, let's just see if we can go training with them just to buy another day to find out even once what it's like to ride with, full-time cyclists in Europe. And, they said, okay, come on then. Well, just for a joke, they thought, well, let's take them out in the middle of nowhere and lose them and see if they can find their way back to the hotel. But yeah, we did all right against them, and the director sportive noticed that we were actually two young, pretty talented young men, and they wanted to take us both on. But David being too young, they actually found him what they used to call a third category, which is an under 18 team about 100k south of where we were, and they let me stay in a hotel, $2 a day hotel. And they gave me a jersey, and I started going to the races.
So, I love the part, when I was reading it, I love the part where you didn't have enough money to even buy food. You had to get away to a race because at least you got fed all right and hopefully win enough in a bike race so that you could buy some food when you got back.
That's exactly right. We used to get back to the hotel after a race, and after having divided up any prize money, you might have $20 and straight down to the delicatessen downstairs and buy something to eat because we were always hungry. And, you know, I rode that first year, almost a whole year, probably 4 kilos under my normal weight because they're just, you know, you were just training, racing. There wasn't that much food for us. And so, yeah, it was it was a bit of a struggle.
I love the story. I love the story along that line. I think when you were over, it may be in Belgium just for the World Championships, but you were riding back from a Belgian race, and with an English guy, and you said, "Have you got any food?" I think you're staying next to each other, and he said, "No." He said, "Look," he said, "I've got some potatoes. We could boil them up." But then on the way, you went past a field that, look, it had spinach.
Alan Piper's story. That's Alan Piper's story.
Yeah, that's Piper, yeah.
I was just about to say that your journey sounds very similar to Alan Piper.
I've been watching them both today. I've gone from Melbourne to here.
Your research today is cherry ripe, Johnny. But, Gary, it seems like there was a bit of a culture back in those days of these young Aussies that were just fearless. Like, let's just go, we'll work it out when we get there. You know, what was that?
So true. It was, you know, that first year that I went there with Dumps, Dave Allen, there would have been probably another 4 or 5 Aussies in Italy. I think there was a few more up in Belgium. We were all pretty much, we knew each other from racing in Victoria. And so occasionally we'd cross tracks and, you know, you'd hear how your mates were struggling. They weren't getting looked after perhaps as much as I might have been or some of the others were. And so that first year especially was just a battle to even get through the year without going home because it was very tough. You know, I went through a couple of periods where I just thought I can't do it. I want to go home because, you know, I missed a lot of things about life in Australia. I missed my family, and you know, it's not easy when you don't know the language, and you know, people take the piss out of you, and it can be hard. And it was only when I started to get results that I got more encouraged and I got a little bit more respect. So things got a little easier, but you know, we weren't actually winning much at first, and it was pretty hard. We were considered outsiders because apart from Phil Edwards from England and Clyde Sefton, there were no other English-speaking or even foreign-speaking riders that I came across probably for that first year or even 2 years. So, you know, it wasn't easy in those days.
Do you think that experience made you hungrier because there's so much more at stake? You were so far out of your comfort zone compared to the other guys that could go home to a home-cooked meal to their families and all that sort of stuff?
Not really. My my personal goal was to turn professional at some stage, and that's what I really lived for. I just wanted to be a professional, and I wanted to compete against or ride amongst the very best, and just see how I went. So that was my motivation. And when things got tough, I would, I'd have a difficult time. But in the end, I reminded myself that that's what I still wanted to do, and so I got back onto it. But I know homesickness was really hard for the guys in those days. All you had was a letter, and you didn't always get the letters that people sent you, and you wrote letters home that didn't arrive. So, uh, yeah, it was. You had to learn the language. You had to learn the language.
Yeah.
I did, and I actually don't know how I did, but I must have felt that need to learn the language, because I picked it up pretty quickly, and once I did that, I was okay, because then I could talk to people, and I made friends outside the cycling world, and that really helped me, to just orient myself a little, in the culture there.
We've got
Very different to our culture.
We've got a few live comments coming in because there has been a build-up. We have had a few people saying, you got to get Garry Clively on. So there's a lot of people that are very happy to see you. Wendy Superfan says, hi, guys. Hi, Gary. But Tom Maloney says, I've been very fortunate to have enjoyed some personal contact with Garry Clively over the years, in and out of cycling. He's an outstanding individual. He has an incredible story to tell. Now, the Wheel Wizard. He says, the 77 for Vuelta was especially designed to get world champ Freddie Martins with short TTs and not so big mountain stages to ride. Ironically, he won the prologue, was seen in the world champs jersey again. He says, Gary was 2 times third, 1 5th, 2 6th, 1 7th, and 7th in the GC. The Wheel Wizard. He's the man that does the research for us. Fantastic stuff. Gary Tilley says, the reputation of the governing body hasn't really improved over the journey. We've had the one wood out of recent times after the Olympics. And Tom says, the Australian cycling body has over the years had governance problems, and maybe there again now. I would think communication was a little bit better than the way they treated you, but we don't know. And Will Wizard says, as Mark Meadows says, Aussies come to Europe as if they are going to war. They leave everything behind. Do you think that's a fair statement?
It is, because what can you take with you but your bike? Your life as an Australian in those days, and Mark Madio was, he was a cyclist in the 80s, and so he would have been familiar with Phil Anderson, Alan Piper, and they were of the same ilk as I was, and Don Allen and others. You do leave it all behind, because you can't take anything with you. You can't just drive across the border and visit your family. You really are on your own, and if you're lucky enough to have mates, even Aussie mates there, well, good on you. But I think we're all pretty isolated in those days. So yeah.
So in 1975, you're over there. You race. You've joined this amateur team, Siapa, and you're starting to get a little bit of form. Then you go over to Belgium for the World Championships. Things didn't change from then, because you put in a fantastic performance on a really hot day in Belgium, and finished 4th in the World Amateur Road title, which was a huge performance. Just tell us about that day.
Yeah, that day was a very strange kind of day. Just remembering back, it was hot. It must have been 34, and it was the end of August, and we'd been up there for 3 or 4 weeks, and it was mostly pretty sort of mild weather. So just coming into that World Road Championship race was hot. There were conditions applied to your feed. So you had, I think, 1 feed during the race, which was 190 Ks. If you didn't get your bottle or bag or whatever, you were in big trouble. And a lot of riders didn't, because there were, I think, around 300 starters in that race. And part of the circuit was on the typical Belgian back roads, maybe metre and a half road that went on for 4 or 5 Ks up and down in a crosswind. So, you can imagine 300 guys. You got Poles, Russians, Italians wanting to be in the top 30 riders, and it's just chaos. And there were guys falling off their bikes, doing somersaults into fields, yelling. It was just crazy. And I think that part of the course really created a bit of an attrition by sort of crashes. But it was a hard course. It was undulating, a few steep pinches here and there, and it was very exposed. There was no coverage from houses, trees, nothing like that. So it was a race of attrition, and by the last lap, I remember the Poles went to the front on that narrow stretch of road and just put the hammer down, and I was the last rider to tack on the back of maybe 20 guys. And I just found myself, weaving through these guys going, left and right. And I just got on the back of, I think it was Cerruti, who actually beat me for the bronze. He and I were the last ones to get on. And from then on, we just raced that last lap flat out, not realizing that there were 2 guys already a half minute in front of us. Because of all the chaos, just so many riders trying to sort of battle to the front of the peloton all day, you didn't realize that there might be guys in front. And there were 2 guys out in front that I didn't see anyway until probably 5 Ks to go, when they crested the rise that was in front of the one that we just came up on. And so they were gone. Andre Gevers and Swedish guy, was it Nilsson? I can't remember. Anyway, so we kind of realised, we're not going to catch him. We're riding for third. And so, 15, 20 of us sprinted for third, which was uphill. Final K was just a grind up to the line. Very hard, very, very hard.
Yeah, but that's so. You from that you go back to Italy. So how the pro contract, the interest came not long after that. Just tell us about that.
Okay, so we went back to Italy, which was by that stage very early September. So within the next 3 weeks, I rode a tour, and I won the first stage there. So I got some attention for getting the jersey on the first stage, which was in the Italian Alps. I won the first stage to a mountaintop finish. I did all right in that stage race. I didn't win it, but I finished top 10. And then there were 2 more races that I rode, and I won both of them. And as it turns out, the director of the Filatex team and the Manuflex team happened to be scouting around, looking at a couple of other guys who I was racing against. And turns out I beat both of those guys in those 2 races, one in one race and the other guy in another race. And I got approached after the second win by the Manuflex director, Primo Franchini, asking me if I would like to go training with the team on the following Tuesday, just as a bit of a, get to know some pros, have a chat, with Primo, get to know him a little bit, and see if we might talk about next year maybe. There was no actual talk about what we would do, but the idea was sort of in the air that this might lead to something. So I went training with the team, and one of the guys who I beat in the last race that I won, he was there too, Alfio Vandy, who ended up also joining the team and having a very successful pro career. So Alfio and I rode with the guys from Manuflex, and we did all right against them out training. They were very impressed, and Primo asked me, "What do you reckon? Do you think you could get a pro license to come race with us next Saturday?" And I said, "Oh, what about my team I'm with now? Like, this was Tuesday. I've got to tell my, director. I live with the family that supports the team, and let's go for a drive." Okay, we'll go for a drive. I went in to see my director from the Siapa team, and I said, "Oh, look, I've had an offer to turn pro to race next Saturday in the Giro d'Emilia. I'd like to do it." And he said to me, "Oh, are you crazy? You can't do that. Next year we're gonna do something big. Come on, like, why don't you stay with us?" You can't. And when he said you can't, I thought, hang on, yes, I can. I don't have a contract, and you're trying to tell me that I can't as if you owe me. And I thought, no, I'm out of here. I'm going to take my chance. The door's open, and that's what you did in those days. If the door opened, you went right through it, and it's just like being in a bike race. The chance comes, and you got to grab it. So I said, I'm out of here.
Sounds like that scene off The Castle, when he goes, "Tell him to get stuffed."
Yeah, I think there was something about being an Aussie, just had that compulsion or the impulse.
Yeah.
And you believed in it, and so you just followed your heart, and that's what I did. And,
Will Wizard's got a good question, Iffy. He says, "What does Gary remember about the 16th 256-kilometre stage of the 76 Giro that finished in Arozio, won by De Vlamic, second Giamondi, third Moser, fourth Garry Clively, and sixth a guy called Eddie Merckx?" What do you reckon of that day, mate?
I do remember that day very well. That was, I think, the last week of the Giro. Another hot day. There were so many hot days. We had to climb Madonna del Ghisallo twice towards the end, and we came off that the last time. And then from the bottom of the descent, I think it was about maybe 10 odd Ks to the finish at Arozio. And there might have been a dozen guys, 15 guys. In the last kilometre, we were all starting to string out because Merckx had Jos Bruyere, who was, a faithful lieutenant. He went on the front to lead out, and he just, okay to go, he just went to the front and started winding up. And it was, again, one of these long uphill drags they used to love to give to us to finish on. And I had De Vlaming's wheel, just found myself on his wheel, and he was on Moser's wheel, and Moser was following Bruyere. So I thought, this is looking all right. I might finish top 10 if I can just hang on. Like, I already knew that when De Vlaming kicked, there was no way that I would be able to kick with him because he was just incredible. I mean, when he took off, it was phenomenal. The amount of, I don't know what the wattage was in those days, but geez, he was incredible. Such an amazing cyclist. And maybe 200 meters to go, somebody comes up beside me and grabs me by the hip, pulls me back and puts himself right on Roger's wheel. I had to kind of regain and follow up on the wheel of that rider, who that was Giamondi. And he had the pink jersey, so he thought he had a right. And I followed them. I followed those four guys to the line. Moser took off. De Vlaming, sure enough, kicked past him, and I just followed Giamondi to the line in fourth place. And but I wasn't happy with Giamondi at all, because he'd actually asked me if I wanted to join his team the next year. And I was thinking that would be wonderful because, he was a hero of mine. he had the pink jersey, and I had a lot of respect for him. But that incident put an end to that. Very disillusioned with him, and it actually had a lot to do with, you know, what I went through at the end of my cycling life at the end of the Vuelta in '77. So, yeah.
Well, let's move on to that, because I know we hear about the Vuelta, and I don't want to,
Yeah.
because it's important stuff. So you were only 20 when you rode that Giro, which was sort of May of '76. Then the following year, Vuelta used to be the first Grand Tour, so it was straight after Liège-Bastogne-Liège, so April. So you're 21 and you're at the Vuelta. So, and of course, it's the famous Vuelta where Freddie Martin's won 13 stages and overall. So, take us through a little bit of that wonderful event. And as I said at the start of the show, you became the first Australian to finish in the top 10 of a Grand Tour, which is amazing.
Okay, the Vuelta. Again, we came from Belgium, where my team had gone up to ride Tour of Flanders, and then a few days later we rode Flèche Wallonne. Now, both of those races were below 10 degrees. The Flèche Wallonne, it snowed. It was below 5. It was chilly. You finished the races frozen through and through, and so much cobblestones, it takes you a few days to get your feet back, to thaw out, and even to think seriously about going training again. We went from there, and we went back to Italy, packed another bag, and we flew straight to the Vuelta. And the Vuelta, it's 35 degrees, so it's a big shock, not just for us, but for anyone coming from the northern races. It takes a little bit of getting used to. We had a prologue, then we had one or two sort of bunch sprint finishes, and then we had a very hilly stage on the third day. And I remember Frieder den Hertog from the Frisol team took off like about 100 k's to go, and just smashed the race to pieces. And it became a scramble, because he took off on the bottom of a long climb. And it wasn't like he was a great climber or something, but he was just having a good day. And honestly, most of the field were in big trouble because of the heat. And so that day, 100 k's, I was in the second group, chasing behind Den Hertog. It was Mertens and maybe 4 or 5 others. And then I was with Pollentier, one of my teammates, Perletto, and a couple of others. And, we were just glued to the road. It was so hot. I was thinking, geez, we're going to be outside the time limit. We're just dead, honestly, like just struggling. And about 20 k's to go, I exchanged looks with Pollentier, and he looked at me and I looked at him. We're going like, we're not even going to get to the finish. It's so hot. There's no water. You can't go back to your team car in those days to get water. Your bidons are gone, an hour or two ago. You just, struggling to get to the finish, and which we did. And turns out we were only a few minutes behind them. So I was just in the top 10, and on the third day in the GC, and I was really surprised. I didn't think that I'd be anywhere near that. And so things just began to evolve. Every day, Freddie Mertens and his Flandria boys just put the hammer down about an hour to go. There was always hot winds, so they just waited till there was a crosswind, put the hammer down. If you survived, then you just gradually improved in the GC. If you didn't make it there, you could lose 20 minutes. And I was inspired, and I started going better and better every day. And I made it into the break every day. I climbed almost as better than I'd ever done before. It wasn't a super hilly welter, but there were climbs every day. There was something, and every day it was over 34 degrees. Like it was hot. We had one rainy day, but it was just surviving the long stages and the long efforts to stay with the leading group. When the hammer went down, 50, 60K to go, they wanted to train hard. They wanted to race hard because they were going to do the Giro. So every day was hard work. And they were phenomenal. Freddie Mertens, Pollentier, geez, those guys were. Pollentier won the Giro. Freddie won the Vuelta. They were the best in those times at what they were doing, honestly. Yeah.
You said in that video that we showed earlier that there was a punch on. You got punched in the head by an Italian rider. What happened in that instance?
Oh, that was actually my first race as a pro. So yeah, that wasn't in the Vuelta. That was my first race as a pro, where that was my initiation into welcome to the pro ranks.
All right.
Now, that's 77. So by the end of 77, you've got disillusioned, and we'll go into all of the reasons for that later. But so you came home and you hung up the bike. You completely out of cycling. As you said, you were soul searching. And you were nearly 10 years off the bike. And then you decided, well, then we've got someone in the wings. I think he's hiding in there somewhere.
I think before we do, we're going to have a drinks break, Iffy, because we're about halfway through. So let's have a quick drinks break, quick message from Bike Exchange and Amy Gillan Foundation. On the other side, we have Dave Sanders, who's arguably one of Australia's greatest cycling coaches. He's worked with the likes of Cadel Evans, Baden Cook, Simon Guerin, Simon Clark, Brett Lancaster, and Anna Wilson. And he spent 26 years at the VIS and rode himself. It'll be after the break, and we'll continue the story with Garry Clively.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Life is like a two-way street. It's about consideration and mutual respect. Roads are much the same. However you get around, walk, ride or drive, if we share our roads, we can all be safer. The Amy Gillett Foundation is Australia's peak cycling safety charity. Our mission is for safe cycling in Australia. Our vision is for 0 cyclist deaths. Over the last year, we've seen an enormous increase in people taking up cycling, whether it be for recreation, with the family, commuting, or even to start your own cycling career. We need to do more to make it safer for every cyclist. 20 cyclists every day are hospitalised, and 1 cyclist is killed every 10 days on Australian roads. So, the next time you jump on your bike or hop in your car, remember to practice the 4 C's. Be courteous, calm, considerate and conscientious. Every cyclist death is preventable, and we all deserve to get home safely. Please donate to help the Amy Gillett Foundation make the roads safer for you and for me.
He's getting a bike exchange and great messages there from the Amy Gillis Foundation. And we're joined by the great Dave Sanders. How are you, Davo?
Evening, guys. Yeah, all good here. Thanks very much.
Hey, everyone.
Gary. Good, mate.
Now, with lockdown, some people might not have seen you for a while, Davo, and they might be getting worried. Can you just please calm them down and explain that you're doing a lot of Ks on the bike? Hence
Yeah,
the weight loss.
I don't have an illness. I found the love for the. Well, I've had a few illnesses over the years. I've found the love for the turning the pedals again, and I've been out riding with Gary when we can, up till recent months, and hearing these great yarns around the bike paths. It's just been a real pleasure. But it was a matter of turning negative into a positive. For the first time in 30 odd years, I wasn't traipsing around the world or chasing other people. I thought, well, I'm locked down here. What am I going to do? So just looked after my diet a bit and got on the bike and come out other side of a new man. It's good.
Now, Dave, I don't want to sound like I'm nagging you, but I'm very particular with audio on this show. Can you untangle your headphones and because you've got the microphone on the side there, it's rubbing on your neck.
Right.
So you need it sort of hanging loose.
I'll put them in front.
So you've wrapped around. That's it. That's
there you go.
it. Way better.
There you go.
Have a listen
How's
to that.
that?
Perfect.
Right.
Bloody beautiful. John, onwards.
So,
It's like being married.
but cut a story short, there's a close association between the Sanders family and the Clively family. Gary's brother is best mate of Davo. So, Davo, tell us a story. So,
Quickly.
Gary,
Gary.
we'll cut past that. Gary's come home. He's a long while off the bike, and then Terry has mentioned to you.
Look, Gary and I grew up together. The families are close. Terry's still my best mate. We see him all the time. And we were just Christmas drinks, which we had every 7 days or so during those periods for a decade or so. And we're just talking about Gary. Where's Gary? Which we did the year before and the year before that. And I think I know where he's up in St Kilda somewhere. And we just made a pact. Well, we've got to go and find him. And nothing to do with cycling, just to do with just socially and where he's at, what's going on, and which we decided to do. So Terry did his research, and within a week or a couple of weeks, we did go and find Gary, living in looked like that house from the Young Ones or the Addams Family, with a sort of some cool dudes all cruising around, but. It was Gary. I knew Gary was very pleased to see us, and we just had a chat, and he had his partner, a lovely little daughter there, and we went out for a night, just local band, which I didn't know where it was, but Gary reminded me recently it's one of Jerry Ryan's pubs now, the Prince, and we just said that was fine. And I just in conversation, I don't know if it was then or a bit later, I said to Gary, "Why don't you come and what are you doing or whatever? Come and maybe do a couple of days work at the bike shop." I had a shop down in Chelsea, and if we needed him, just to get him out into the world again, not necessarily our world, but we just missed him, and he was a big part of who we were as kids, and I'd witnessed his amazing cycling career. Anyway, cut a long story short, I would say it was a couple of months later, he gave me a ring and said, you can still find something to do. I said, yeah, sure. So Gary turned up down at the shop, and he came down on the train, and we found him a few things to do, and he was coming down on the train every day or whenever it was. And I said, well, Gary, it's why don't you just roll down on a bike? It's not that far. And I actually used to think Beach Road was flat. I now have found it's got mountains in it. But I said it'd be a pretty simple ride down, wouldn't it? He said, I remember him saying, I don't think I could make it that far. I wouldn't get that far. So what do you mean you wouldn't get that far? One of the greatest cyclists we've ever had. Anyway, cutting further down the chase, I forget exactly what day or whatever, but I think he said, oh, look, I might just have a pedal around or whatever. So we got a bike, a good bike, but an ordinary bike off the shelf. And that he did start riding to work on that. Cut to another end of it. Eventually, he said, oh, I might just put a good pair of wheels in this bike, whatever. None of us were contemplating or imagining anything more than riding to work and getting a little bit fit. And then the next thing, I didn't know, but I heard, and I'd heard people saying, "Oh, was that Garry Clively saw out in the Dandenongs on the weekend, or was that?" I said, "Oh, it probably was," but we didn't know that it was moving to this level. Then I hear Gary's turned up out at what used to be VFL Park Tuesday night races, and this is a great story. He's lined up to enter, and they said, "Oh, what grade do you want to ride in? Have you raced before?" "Oh, yeah, I've raced before." "Oh, we'll put you in C or D grade or something." And he said, "No, I'd like to ride in A grade." "Oh, no, you start down with C grade." And Lorraine Collins, who was a stalwart of the club for many years, turned and heard the voice and said, "Is that you, Gary?" And she said, "Oh, hello, Lorraine, yeah, it's me." And she said to the guy handing out the numbers, if this guy wants to ride an A grade, you put him in A grade. And that was the beginning of it. And Gary started racing again, which we never imagined would happen, but he did. And the story goes from there. I think he might have missed the break that night, but was never missed a break from then on, front group every night. And the kids were saying, "Who is this old guy? What's going on here?" And they were about to find out who he was. And as you said, within a year, I think he'd won the Victorian Road title, and the following year he won the Australian Road Championship, and most of the classics around the country. Earn respect.
I have to ask you, Gary, what was it that made you become disillusioned with the sport and to walk away?
That's a bit of a complicated question. What made me become disillusioned? I guess it was in those days there was a bit of sort of mafia in the racing. So you had to conform to the dictates of a small group of riders, and this isn't in all of the open events, but things like circuit races, criteriums, some of the smaller races, there was always somebody telling you what to do and what you should do and what you could do and couldn't do. And, every time you did something they didn't like, then someone would come and be very angry with you. And I was probably a little bit kind of independent. I wanted to race the way I wanted to race, and I rubbed up badly against a few people in those seasons that I raced there, and eventually I got banned from all of the invite races, and I started to get a reputation as someone who just didn't want to cooperate, and that's not a nice place to be when you're racing in a peloton, I tell you. And so I was ostracized gradually, and I was also disillusioned with my team. I thought my teammates were lazy, and so I stopped expecting anything from them, and I kind of had a falling out at the end of the Vuelta with my team, and I just started thinking, well, what's going on? Is this what I really want to do? Do I want to do this for the next 10 years, the way things are at the moment? And it took me, months and months, but eventually I decided that I think I'm going to go home, and then I'll see what I want to do once I get there. And so that's what I did. I went home.
We've lost Dave.
Came home.
Probably come back. Yeah. When you did get back, did you have any regrets at any point, thinking, "Oh, hang on, what have I done?" Or was it you realised it was the right call?
No, I didn't have any regrets. I had plenty to go on with, and it was only years and years later that I was going through another one of these difficult situation, and that I also started working with Davo at that time, and just got a bit of a hankering to go for a ride. And once I started getting back on the bike again, the whole thing came back, but I was different by then, and I didn't care at all what other people were thinking about what you should and shouldn't do. So, I was riding, in a way, as a free man. Whereas when I was younger, I was naive, and I was easily led and easily confused. So it was different. It was different later on when I started cycling again, but I didn't miss it too much in the meantime.
I remember when you did make that comeback, and I remember talking to Davo, and I had a bike shop down in Geelong. We had a small bike team, and so I offered you a huge contract. I mean, much bigger than what you're getting in Europe. I think it was a jersey and a pair of wheels, but bike power. And that's you winning that Australian title. Give me a good plug. Thanks, mate. And we'll go through that in a minute. But I remember you were really starting to find form. We also had a bit of a mountain series, and we had a race in the Yuyangs, and you creamed them. There were some good bike riders there, really good bike riders, and you won it. You rode away from them. It was a criterium up the Yuyangs climb, and I think you won it by a couple of minutes, and that's when I realised, wow, been away for 10 years, and it looks like you've never been away.
Yeah, John, thanks very much for that sponsorship. It was very, very handy, believe me. Those races, those midweekers, they were actually very, very hard to win. It was Omar Palov that just kept winning and winning. If you beat him, you were going well. And there were two races in the Yuyangs. One of them I did win, and another one that I finished with Omar, who won, and Agostino Giramondo, who I work with now, Ago. And Ago and I can't remember who was second, who was third, but those midweekers were actually very tough because you'd race Saturday, Sunday, probably went training Tuesday, raced your races on the Wednesday, and then had to go training again on Thursday. Of course, everyone's working. You're not like a pro rider. You're working part-time, full-time, and so hard racing.
Now the Australian title, that was that was out at Lara. I remember it well. And in the end, there was only three of you left. There was Eddie Sellis, Scott Stewart, and you, and they were teammates. They were both riding for the Repco, whatever it was called, team. So I thought, look, it's going to be a bummer. I'm watching it. I'm thinking, you're going to run third. What a shame. Tell us about that finale, because you outsmarted them.
Yeah. So I had two flat tires that day. And the second one, you gave me the front wheel, and I was ready to pull out because I didn't feel very good. And I thought, well, that's it. It's pouring rain. I'm done. I just don't have anything. And it turned out when I pulled over to change the wheel, my mother and my sister were right there. They just happened to be there. And when you were putting my front wheel in, my mum said to me, come on, you're doing well. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. And I didn't say anything to her, but I thought, well, I can't just pull out, in front of my mum and my sister. They've come all this way and they're standing out in the rain to encourage me. So I got back on and I chased through the convoy, caught the group. And as I caught the group, I could see that Eddie Salas and Paul Miller were out in front. And I thought, well, I'm riding with Paul and Peter Basanko that day. We agreed that we would help each other. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to, try and help Paul, even though I didn't think he would win, but I thought, okay, he's defending champion, give him a shot. And as I rolled through the group coming back on, Scott Stewart took off on the left, and I just went around the group to cover that move, not expecting it to do anything. And Scott went clear with me, and we had 50 meters. We were between the two in front and the group. and there was only like half a dozen back there, if so. So I said to Scott, what do you want to do? And he said, well, we might as well go on with it. Okay, so we started working turns, and took us a while, but we came close to catching the two in front, Eddie Salas and Paul Miller, and Scott stopped coming through. And I said, what's going on? He goes, I can't. And as you know, when someone tells you that and they have a teammate in front, you know that as soon as you get on, he's going to attack. So I thought, okay, that's what I've got to watch for. When we get on, Scott is going to go. So I kind of just tempoed on, and sure enough, Scott's taken off. Yeah, and Scott was extremely strong, and it was a crosswind when he went. Paul went straight out the back, and I followed Eddie and Scott for a few hundred meters, and they started pulling over to do turns, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Scott's very, very strong. I've just come back from 2 flat tires. I better watch it. I didn't think I would win, but I thought I've got to play it cool. So I said to them, I tell you what, I'm going to follow. If I can't come through, I'll just ride third. I'll take third. And Scott did a huge turn, like 3 Ks on the front, just grinding, like, 60 Ks an hour. And when he pulled over, I kind of recovered a little, and I started coming through. And as we came to the finish, I said to the two of them, guys, I've been working, I'm going to sprint. Oh, hang on, you said you wouldn't sprint. I said, yeah, but I've been working, so I'm going to sprint. Fair's fair. All right. They probably thought, who cares, Gary can't sprint anyway. Eddie's a renowned sprinter. And what I noticed with them was that they were riding, something like 53.15, and I knew that the finish was going to be in a tailwind, and that we would gradually swing around to the left and we'd pick up a tailwind. So as we approached that bend in the road, I put my gear to my 12 cog, which is what we rode in those days, 53.12. And as we swung around into the tailwind, I just went around them and I started winding up my 12 and thinking, I've got a tailwind, it's going to pick me up. Let's see what they'll do. And they didn't get near me, and I think they were gone anyway. They were cooked, and I actually, in the last couple of Ks of that race, I suddenly felt really good again. Like I really recovered myself. And once I got to the front, I thought, well, who's going to beat me now? They can't get me. I felt good. And I had my 12 spinning.
I've got goosebumps. Yeah. Great stuff.
But once we got past the line, I heard all about it. You this and you that. And I think it was Eddie said to me, you're not a professional. And I said, well, you don't know what a pro is, mate. I've had it up the backside so many times. I know what a pro is. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I would have just said, I can't hear you, mate. I can't hear losers.
So look, while we've got all you guys here, we haven't even spoken about the amazing stage last night of the Vuelta. So I just thought we'd just touch a bit on it because it was a stage and a half. And we had an Aussie, an aspiring young Aussie, who's almost an inspiring story as yours, Gary, in Jay Vine, who ended up finishing third on the stage after this. I mean, he caught up in the car, getting a bidding, and managed to make a mess of himself, did stitches in the arm. I thought his race was over when that happened. I thought, oh, he's not going to get up. Got up, they stitched him up, or they got him, patched him up. And not only did he come back, he's done an amazing ride to finish third in a really tough mountain finish. So brilliant.
We've got a question for Davo from John Bodie. He says, it seems to me there are a lot more crashes nowadays. Am I correct? If so, why do you think there is so many crashes?
It's an interesting question, and it's an interesting conversation. There's always been crashes. I remember Cadell used to say to me, my only thing I worry about riding the tour is getting through the first week. And so once we get to the hills, we can race. It's always been mad. If you go back and you remember the days of when Froome's first started, he crashed out several times the first week. But the other side of it is now it's more frantic. There's all this. There's so much about points. It's all radio controlled. Everyone's got directors telling them to ride the front, get to the front, ride the front. Guys are not doing as many races. They're not as experienced. Like you just talked about young Jay Vine riding Grand Tours, his first year pro. And these kids coming out of juniors and going pro tour. And there's just not the experience there used to be, where guys would race, 100 and whatever races a year. They come and they've got big motors, big numbers, and they're good enough physically to be in the race, but they don't have the experience. They don't have the background that, pros of old. And there's a lot less respect. It's just not the respect there used to be. They don't care what jersey on, you get wiped off the wheel, and it's messy. And all those factors together is the reasons why you're getting so many crashes, I think.
That's a bloody good answer. I think if he could have nailed that as eloquently.
Most riders also had a lot of it.
What are you saying, Gary?
I was going to say, in earlier times, cyclists also rode track season. They had a lot of experience of riding in very tight-knit groups, criteriums on Sunday, track racing all through summer. You learn to handle your bike from a very young age, and I think that's missing. If you're on your exercise bike or your ergo and you're not riding in a peloton frequently, you lose touch, and you can get in trouble very quickly.
And I think what we've seen in just this second half or this year, nobody raced enough last year. They even come in where they didn't have a lot of the classics early in the year, and we're still missing racing. And that's why you just do lose touch, and you lose that automatic feeling of managing a peloton.
Yeah.
We have gone quite a lot longer on the show than we normally go, so I'll just quickly wrap up on the GC, because we've got Jack Hay, who's sitting sixth, but really in fourth place as far as the GC. It'll all change tonight because it's a monster stage. But I just thought one of the things we spoke about last night was handling life in lockdown. So some of the ways that a lot of people are struggling in being in lockdown, not being able to get out. And I've had a few emails today with some interesting ones. But of how you handle it. One guy reckons he's just got to toughen up. But
what else did he say?
At the fat, he called you the fat guy. But
the fat bald guy that winds you up. So please keep your emails respectful.
Bit hard. But another really nice one of a guy whose son, 18-year-old, is going to Europe racing in the under 23 Flanders and that coming up. So and how he loves the detour. But I just wanted to touch with both Gary and Dave on any thoughts they've got on how people can handle the situation that some people are finding themselves in with a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, well, it's I talk about you've got to do physical training. You also need to do mental training, and to get you through a lot of things in life. I could wander off into philosophic conversations here, but the biggest thing is, and I keep talking about it, is as hard as we reckon it is, would you rather be here or in Afghanistan? Would you rather be here on the generation before us in the world wars or whatever else? This is our world war. And we just have to structure your days. I mean, I thought the same thing when this started. I'm going to sit around and eat and drink and get fatter and whatever, or get some discipline. And for once in my life, I can control what I'm doing and turn a negative into a positive. And you really have to use mental strength. Even you get your bike, even if you only go 5K from home, that's still 10K there and back. You still find a lap, and you can do 2 hours around the block up and down. I once did 6.5 hours with Simon Gerrans at Lavigno, and we never went further than 10K from home, up and down, up and down, up and down, around. You can do it. You can always talk about, don't talk about what you can't do, talk about what you can do, and you can find things to do. 100%, you can.
What about you, Gary?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to be busy in some way. If you're able to, if you're a cycling person and you're able to have the time to go cycling, go out on your bike, do something on your bike. Even if, as Davo says, you go 5K this way, 5K that way. When I'm not working, I'm out on my bike. It just works wonders for clearing, my head.
Absolutely.
Keeps me emotionally in touch and physically on top of, my condition. And I'm able to then go to work when I can. I'm able to, have the strength to get through my day, maintain some kind of engagement. Personally, I've been interested in this situation that's going on in a global sense. So I do a lot of research into the situation at large, and I find that helps me a lot. It gives me a lot to think about. I talk to people and I listen to people. I listen to people a lot who have different ways of looking at the situation we're in. And I agree with Davo that we are in a kind of a wartime situation. It is a sort of a life and death thing. You've got to decide how you're going to approach the future. Are you going to live by mandates, or are you going to find other ways to deal with the situation? It's very, very difficult. And my hat's off to everyone who's trying in some way to be engaged and to do something about their situation. Be healthy, get some sleep, look after yourself, talk to your friends, be kind to people.
That's it. Yeah. Free rangers, and this is a good point. Probably the worst thing to say to a person with depression and anxiety is harden up or cheer up. 100%. That mentality is gone. It's bullshit. It makes actually a problem worse. And this harden up thing is why we got into a big problem in the first place. It's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of compassion. And that really pisses me off. Anyone that says harden up, it actually is harder to talk up. It's easier to say nothing. So, I think harden up's just a cop-out. So,
and I think that's the important thing. I think we're all touching on that. But a lot of people, once they get into, especially if they're isolated, they're not talking. So I encourage people, if you're feeling a bit down, ring somebody. You need to, well, we've offered anyone of our detour degenerates to
send an email to Johnny.
And a couple today. Or give us, and I'll give you my number. Happy to talk to anyone, because it's all about telling people how you feel, talking to someone, and realizing there are a lot of people struggling. There's no weakness in having a challenge like that. No. It's a part of life. So need to talk and open up, and that's the way moving forward.
That's right. Speaking up is the first step to a long journey on, finding better ways of managing depression, anxiety, because it's not just a snap your fingers. You got to do it. You have to do it, because isolation's no good. So anyway, but
I just want to really thank you, Gary, for coming on. You're a legend. I can't wait.
I enjoyed it.
I can't wait until this
thanks, guys.
Lockdown's out of the way, and we'll go for a pedal. We'll get you and Dave O, and Donnie Allen, and we'll go. We'll ride it together.
I'm ready. Let's do it. Yeah.
I think the big takeaway for me, Gary, is just stick to your gut, find your passion, but don't be afraid to tell them to get stuffed.
You got to do that from time to time.
That's right.
You got to clear the air. Yeah.
But it was fantastic.
Try not to be. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, guys. See ya. Have a good night. Bye.
You too, mate. Bye. Garry Clively, legend.
Okay, so we better quickly talk about Amila.
Yes,
because
yes.
we've gone overboard on the show tonight, but it was great to catch up with one of the real specials. Yes, I have.
Got your script.
Yep.
Good job.
Discover a tropical playground of powdered sugar sand, lush jungle, and crystalline waters. Amila Maldives luxury resort reeks of timeless style and endless bliss. Stand by for unexpected treats and indulgences. Delighting and surprising you is their hallmark. Miller's motto is to exceed your expectations. The sky is the limit.
Perfect, Iffy. That's obviously talking about the very loud silent auction we've got going to raise money for the Kareka Foundation. And if you do want to make a bid, that's for 2 adults, 2 children, 5 nights accommodation in the Ocean Villa, breakfast, dinner, and Jason and the team will definitely look after you. So send your bids through to john@cyclingevents.com.au. Where are we at, Iffy?
Still at 5,250. Hasn't gone up from there yet, but we've got
Australian
another week to go.
Yep.
Australian dollars.
And the prize is worth over 13.5 grand Aussie. So there you go. Big show. Who's your prediction for stage 15? I messaged the sheriff. I'm trying to get Jackie Haig on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, rest day tomorrow. It'd be great to talk to Jack. Look, it's a tough one because of what's going on. The GC guys, they surprised me. They didn't put the hammer down yesterday. Only in the last 2 or 3 Ks of the climb. I mean, the race leader, Odd Christian Eiking, the Viking, virtually only lost the wheel in the last 500 or 600 metres. That won't be the case tonight. It's a monster of a day. But the GC contenders didn't play it out very hard. I think they will tonight, and I reckon we'll see a big challenge. If you get that map up again and you have a look at the way it goes, you have a look. You've got 2 Category 1 climbs, a Category 2, a Category 3, and then downhill to the finish. I think that it'll be such a hard day. It'll be an interesting one. I'll give Jack Haig a bit of a chance down that hill into the finish. I'll give him a bit of a chance. So I'm going to back him.
Okay. Back Jack.
Yep.
Hashtag back Jack. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As we always say, make sure you like and share and subscribe the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Detour Podcast. Yes.
And apologies to the girls in the Simac Ladies Tour of Holland, which we put off talking about yesterday because we ran out of time, and we've done it again tonight. But we will talk about them because they finished tonight. We'll give them a wrap up and see if I can get one of the girls from the race on as well. So we'll give them their moment they should have had over the last 2 days.
And Dave Sanders, his phone cut out and then he's clicked it again. But Gary's gone, mate. You're a bit late.
Well, had your microphone in it, did you maybe had it and I'm running out of battery? I did charge it a bit there while
that's right.
That's all right, Dave. We just want to thank you so much for coming on, Dave. And we've just done our final wrap up the show, but look forward to catching up. As I said to Gary, when this lockdown's over, we'll get out the bike. We'll get Donnie Allen, Gary, yourself, and myself.
Mate,
and
I've got a brand new bike from him. He doesn't know it yet. He rides around on a thing you wouldn't deliver papers on, and I don't think that's right. So he's got something special for him when we meet up next.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Have you got any? We'll give you the final word to the listeners, Davo. What's the final bit you want to say?
I'll tell you, the word is in my mind, the GC race will really begin tonight. You can see the way they rode last night, all still under control. It's going to let loose. Feathers will fly tonight, I believe.
And who's your tip?
Oh, right, we'll let loose, I think, because he's got to get that time back. He still hasn't got it. He's got to open gaps and smash people, and I hope he will.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll see you again tomorrow night, folks. 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the Detour. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay.
This is the winning ride of the Tour de France.